The Fall of Eternity. Epilogue. Before Pyrite had even opened his eyes, the first thing he noticed was the smell. It was an earthy smell and carried hints of recent rain. What he smelled now was far different from the stench of scorched air and metallic rank of spilled blood that had surrounded him before he fell unconscious. Then came the sounds. The chirps of crickets and rustling of leaves as wind passed them by. On top of these sounds was a soft purring, steady and quiet. Slowly, he opened his eyes. He was on his back, and above him, between the canopy of swaying leaves and branches, was a clear night sky filled with twinkling stars. It took him a moment to realize that he didn't recognize those stars. The sky above him was missing the hues of red and blue nebula that colored the night sky over Terra Perpetuum. This sky was naught but white dots. Realization hit him like a hammer, and it all came flooding back. He tried to sit up, but a hand held him down. He was about to react, counterattack whoever was assailing him, but a gentle voice calmed him.
"Hey, you're finally awake,"
said the Matriarch.
"I wasn't sure how long you'd be out."
He pushed up anyway and turned to see his mother sitting on the ground behind him. But as he did, a displeased mewling came from something as it fell off his chest and into his lap.
"I tried to stop you,"
his mother sighed. Pyrite looked down at the black mass recovering from the surprise fall. At first, he didn't recognize it, appearing like a nondescript black void. But then, two golden eyes opened and stared up at him. It was a hellcat, but one unlike any he had ever seen. It was tiny, for one, and was missing the characteristic red eyes that hellcats always had. He reached down and grabbed the little creature by the scruff of its neck, lifting it so he could inspect it closely. "Matriarch, what is this?" he asked, with a sidelong glance at her. She looked away, embarrassed.
Well, I think it might be the hell beast of Perpetuum."
The thing, dangling in front of Pyrite's face, reached out and placed a paw against his nose. Pyrite's eyes drifted from the Matriarch to the hell beast of House Perpetuum, the creature that was said to be the most powerful summon ever conceived by Perpetuum's casters. The creature that fought and defeated gods. The kitten before him gave a long blink. "The what?" Pyrite exclaimed, more confused than upset. This is the Hellbeast of Perpetuum." The Matriarch flinched.
Yes, I think so. He seems to have replenished your mana. So he is, to some extent at least, the Hellbeast."
The so-called Hellbeast meowed at him, and he set it down. It curled up in his lap, purring softly as it fell into a carefree slumber. "But why is it so small? I thought the Hellbeast was supposed to be colossal." She let out a sigh.
"Well, I'm not totally sure, but in those last moments, when you were knocked back over the circle, my focus on the summoning turned to you. I wanted to save you. And I think it overrode the summoning."
She glanced around at the unfamiliar forest around them.
"It turned from conjuration to what I believe to have been teleportation."
And all that mana was converted with it. Just how large of a teleportation was it? He wondered. But then reality hit him, and his confusion gave way to utter dread. So, we failed? He felt sick, as if a knot had formed in his stomach. All the effort, all the sacrifices made, had been for naught.
"No,"
the Matriarch declared firmly, and Pyrite met her fierce gaze.
"Don't you remember? Sigrid is dead. He died on your spear. And with most of Perpetuum unharmed, we'll be able to regain our lands. We have endured."
"He's dead." Pyrite sat with that. It didn't feel possible, let alone real. Sigrid Imperiosus had been untouchable for centuries. And Pyrite, of all demons, had ended his tyrannical reign. At last, it's over, Iramed. He thought of his mentor and felt renewed, felt a weight off his chest that had hung on him for 2 centuries. I only wish you could have been there to see it. He traced a hand along one of the golden caps that sat upon the tips of his horns. May your ghost finally find rest. Pyrite of House Perpetuum, the sole remaining member of the Golden Ghost mercenary band, let out a long sigh. I'm glad I didn't kill Akadoth. He'll be free now. The matriarch looked at him, concern in her red eyes.
Pyrite, are you okay?
With Segrid gone, House Imperiosus will collapse. He was the only thing holding that damned house together. Without him, there will be no clear line of succession, and those beneath him will probably end up fighting for control. There might even be uprisings from the houses Segrid subjugated.
That's good,
the matriarch said, but her words felt hollow, distracted. Pyrite eyed her. What is it? Why'd you say it like that?
It's just... I discovered something while I was fighting Sargal. One of the gods was there at the battle.
Pyrite's blood ran cold, and he stared at her wide-eyed. The gods, he breathed.
Sargal was merely her puppet. She was planning to kill both Segrid and me. She was planning to turn the entirety of House Imperiosus into her own puppet army.
Puppets. Amadus, then? He asked. Pyrite knew the lore of the gods. Any Perpetuum-born demon did. But Pyrite had read extensively in his younger years, and the gods were a topic he had focused on when searching for a way to improve his lacking magic.
It seemed to be. She wanted both Perpetuum and Imperiosus destroyed or subjugated, which makes me think
that the rest of them will return soon, Pyrite finished. The Hellbeast yawned and sat up. It looked up at him before crawling up his arm and, despite Pyrite protesting, curled up between his horns. Pyrite ignored the creature now pawing at one of the golden caps on his horn and asked, And Sargal?
I banished him to a pocket dimension outside of the gods' reach. He's free of their domination, at least, but he'll never be able to leave that place.
A look of grief passed behind her eyes. Despite everything Sargal had done, Pyrite still felt the pang of sorrow for the Spellweaver. But more than that, he felt for his mother. He manifested his glaive. Evidently the little Hellbeast had indeed restored his mana, because using a magic crystal as he had done, his mana wouldn't have normally returned so quickly. He planted the glaive's spiked end into the soil and pushed himself up, only to immediately regret it. His mana had been restored, but his body was still exhausted. His muscles screamed at him, and he flinched, nearly groaning with the strain. Once he was standing, he lowered a hand to the matriarch. Well, come on. No point staying here. Let's see if we can't figure out where we are. She took his hand, and he pulled her to her feet. She winced as she rose.
You're right. Do you recognize this forest?
She replied, trying to hide the pain in her voice. Pyrite gave her a concerned look before glancing around. He had been in all manner of forests and swamps throughout Terrapicatus. He had seen the vast plains of Equitarius and the black stone mountains of Domos. He had fought from the glacial plateaus of Neveus to the molten gate of Aduro. He had been all over Terrapicatus, but he did not recognize this forest. The trees around looked different, and Pyrite couldn't determine their types. Their leaves were in shapes and patterns he'd never seen. Even the very air felt foreign. He looked at the matriarch and shook his head. I don't. The matriarch sighed.
I see.
She took a step forward, only to wince and cry out in pain. She began to collapse, but Pyrite caught her. Matriarch! What is it? What's wrong? He demanded. The matriarch took a deep breath and steadied herself. She met Pyrite's concerned gaze and said,
During the fight, Amadus used some kind of bone seizure spell on me and...
She rubbed a hand along her back.
I think it did something to my spine.
Only then did Pyrite realize that the matriarch was shorter than before. Not by much, but enough to be noticeable. It's a miracle you're even standing. Can you fix it?
I tried, but nothing worked. It seems to be some kind of curse.
She reached up and ran a hand along the fuzzy cheek of the Hellbeast. At her touch, the little kitten let out a purr, and the matriarch seemed to recover a bit. Her cheeks, which had looked slightly gaunt, recovered some of their color and fullness.
Give me a second.
Her staff appeared in her hand, and she pointed it at the ground before them. A small sphere of purple glass blinked into existence, and as the shining gem atop the matriarch's staff began to glow brighter, the sphere doubled in size. The ground beneath the sphere began to tremble until, at last, it split open and multiple large rocks tore free. They snapped to the sphere, covering it and forming together until a golem took shape. It placed an earthen hand upon the ground and pushed itself up, standing over them, about double their size. The matriarch beckoned for it to lean down toward her, and it did. She opened a hand, and in it appeared 2 rubies. She placed them into the empty eye sockets of the golem, securing them with a small melding of the stone. She then placed her hand on the golem's cheek.
You are Ven.
The golem stared at her impassively for a moment, then lowered itself to a knee and bowed. Its voice, familiar but different, appeared in their minds.
I am Ven. I am at your service, matriarch.
Pyrite noticed the matriarch's eyes grow cloudy as one tear rolled down her cheek.
I know you will be as wonderful as your predecessor.
They walked quietly. Ven, in his enlarged form, carried the matriarch as he stomped alongside Pyrite. As they walked, Pyrite became more and more certain. Have you ever seen trees like these? And the stars? The sky is empty. Where are the nebula? The matriarch looked up at the star-dotted sky.
I don't know,
she whispered.
I recall us passing momentarily through the void. But where else could we be but Terrapacatus?
Pyrite sighed, but as he did, his breath caught. Through the thinning trees, he saw light. He took his glaive in both hands and set off at a run. As he exited the trees, he froze. What he saw made his heart skip a beat.
What is it, Pyrite?
The matriarch asked telepathically. Lights, he thought, and as Ven came to a stop beside him, he pointed with his glaive. There, far in the distance, glowed a city unlike either had seen. Buildings of metal and glass, built tall and thin, towered high into the night sky. From their many windows burned a light that seemed to chase away the stars with its radiance. The entire city seemed to emanate that yellow glow, as if ablaze, but neither of them saw any fire. Matriarch? Pyrite began. Where are we? The matriarch stared, wide-eyed, at the strange metal city.
I don't know, but I don't think we're in Terrapacatus anymore.
In the realm of Earth, humans reign supreme. All across this blue world's surface, innumerable human nations rule the many regions of this realm. But this is a world without magic and without demons. That is to say, demons are not welcome here. The many religious organizations did not take kindly to the appearance of those with magic and horn. And now, 50 years after first finding themselves stranded in this strange realm, these 2 demons have remained in hiding. Pyrite attempted to find work as a mercenary, but with his lacking mana, he found he was unable to keep his horns and red eyes hidden for long. Repeatedly, he was chased away. And so, with much downtime, he discovered the many electronic devices that were increasingly being invented to provide entertainment. But more than that, he dedicated his time to chronicling the adventures he had been on, the places he had seen, the people he had met, and the world of Terrapacatus he had lost. Even if only in this realm, he would not let all that had happened be forgotten. The matriarch didn't have Pyrite's issue. Though her mana was diminished from Sargal's curse, she still had enough to remain hidden amongst the humans. She found work as a doctor in an attempt to find a solution to her cursed back. Thus far, she had had little luck, for where their technology seemed to perform many of the same miracles as magic, there were still many things the humans didn't know. But the larger issue remained, whether or not they would ever be able to return home. Her attempts to recreate the dimension-leaping ritual had yielded no results. But she wasn't done trying. Pyrite pressed the period key one last time and sat back in his chair. The glowing screen before him was blindingly bright in his dimly lit room. He couldn't wait for the program he was using to finally implement a dark mode. Music blared in his headphones, and he tapped his pen against his journal. He read and reread the last line to make sure it sounded right. Finally, he thought, good, and let out a deep sigh. It's done. The back door to the house opened and shut, and Pyrite took off his headphones. He stood, and with a flush of mana, his pen turned into his glaive. The Matriarch isn't supposed to be home this early. Did the hunters find us again? He crept to his office door and peeked out. But as he did, the Hellbeast trotted by, tail high and eyes beaming. Pyrite turned his glaive back into a pen and slipped it into his pocket. If the Hellbeast was acting like that, it could only be one person. Pyrite found her taking off her shoes. Matriarch Xaramaliss Perpetuum, his mother, sat next to the door, wearing a doctor's lab coat and lacking her proud horns. Pyrite hated the look, always felt it made her head look empty. Thought the same thing for himself when he tried. On the right side, it looks like she's still moving well. That surgery really did help. You're home early? Pyrite asked, leaning against the doorframe. The Matriarch looked up at Pyrite and sighed.
I got fired.
Pyrite raised an eyebrow. Again? The Matriarch glared at Pyrite, and for a moment, her sclera flashed black as the red returned to her eyes.
Don't be difficult. The surgeon was being a moron. And, well...
Then, in his usual small form, half walked, half waddled past Pyrite and raised his stone arms to take the Matriarch's coat. Pyrite's eyes narrowed. What did you do to him?
Teleported him into the sewers?
She said. She waved her hand over her head, and her horns reformed, each segment building itself until they reached a needle point. Pyrite howled with laughter. Hey, that's still better than last time.
I didn't know he was that afraid of snakes.
The Matriarch sighed again.
I'm not sure I can keep doing this doctor thing. And I guess we're gonna have to move again.
Pyrite continued to laugh. Once he had finally contained himself, he said, Well, anyway, come here. There are two things I want to show you. He led the way back to his office and pulled up a video on one of his side monitors. On it was a girl, an anime girl, who was talking at length about yet another random topic. The topic didn't matter, as the topic changed frequently. What did matter was her horns and red glowing eyes. The Matriarch's eyes widened and she stared at the girl.
What? Who is that?
Pyrite smiled. That is a Vtuber. And it seems that demons are pretty common in their industry. We won't have to hide our horns anymore. There was a crash behind them, and the Matriarch looked back toward the doorway, where Ven was wrapped up in her lab coat. The Hellbeast patted playfully at the entrapped golem.
I could do with a change.
Then it's decided! We can finally meet other demons again! Pyrite howled. Years of hiding inside their home had made him go more than a little stir-crazy. The Matriarch smiled at her excited son. But then, her eyes caught on the wall of text on his main monitor, and she tilted her head.
Oh, what's this? Another story?
Pyrite glanced at the monitor and beamed. This is the other thing I wanted to show you. I still gotta write up an epilogue, but... He scrolled to the top of the page, where in large letters were the 4 words of the title. I call it The Fall of Eternity.